Hey everyone, Joey G with Touch with the Brush Model Weathering, and welcome to this new weathering video of weathering this Athearn Blue Box SD40-2. And here we got taken out of the box and see what we got. This is a dummy unit, and a client of mine wanted to weather it for a friend of his for Christmas. So this is actually recorded 2 weeks before Christmas, and I got it done just in time with all the other projects I've been working on. And gave it a nice coat of some matte clear, some dull coat here, and gonna dry it up here. And then the next thing I did was work on all the wheels as well as the plow, as we see here, and using some of that rail brown, dark rail medium brown color, and gives it a nice filthy look. This engine is absolutely faded and just downright filthy, and we're gonna make it just look like the prototype. And so I got those trucks already done, and what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna tape up the trucks, and I'm gonna go to the paint booth here, and I'm going to airbrush a mix of my white acrylic paint and spray the entire locomotive with it, because the whole entire thing is really faded, and I really covered the whole thing. I mean, completely. And you don't want to use spray paint, because that stuff doesn't come off right away. This is regular acrylic paint, could come off with water or rubbing alcohol, and so this is what I use, and this is the best method for me that I use when I fade locomotives. I normally don't do it this heavy, but this particular model I will be doing it this heavy. And you want to get all the nooks and crevices of the model, and basically what we're doing here is we're going back and forth, and I'm going up and down, just getting up and down every little thing here as much as I can for the model itself. And then here we're doing the top of the rooftop too. It gets a whole different coat. So when we finish this, the next step is taking it out and looking exactly what the model has. You can see how faded it looks. So the whole trick is to fade the heck out of it, and then go back and clean out parts that are darker, or which are not paint that is faded. And so that's what I'm doing here with the Q-tips. Same with the body of the locomotive. Some parts are not completely faded out. Some of them actually look like they could be reused. And there's an old workhorse too. And actually, the top of the cab roof, I painted white. It was blue when it came in the box. And I actually have an SD40-2, another one that I'm working on for another client, and I have to do the same thing. It's paint the top of the cab roof white. So that was another touch there. And so it's taking a Q-tip and a little bit of water, rubbing off all the extra paint that is not needed. It just looked like the prototype. And here, what you call it, just trying to go back and forth. And actually, you can see below the brake wheel, painted that part white as well, just like the prototype. Again, I've been given one side, so I kind of had to work on just my imagination and justify the other side by working with this side, so they kind of look similar. For the fading purposes. I tried to look for another photo of the engine. I couldn't find one that looked like this, so I just guessed one side of it. Same thing with what I did with that SD40 from Athearn Genesis, and they're about to spill over my rubbing alcohol. and basically when this part is done, is the whole thing gets covered with a dull coat, that way it doesn't rub off. Now we're going to get the faded look for the blue. And I take some regular acrylic paints, there's a light blue and a white, and just add more and more white to lighten it up, to make it look very, very close to match the color of the locomotive. Here I'm covering the whole thing just like I did with the fading with the airbrush, and then I'll go back and take off the extra paint that is not needed. Zooming in to see what it needs. Starting the letters here with the paints, and doing the same thing here with like the fading, just taking the whole thing, and then there's certain parts where I'll rub off. And really, it's really not that hard, and when you have a prototype, it's easier. There's no guessing involved, so you can look at it and really know where you're working on, how you're going to do it, and you can match the colors easier. And if not, there are plenty of prototype photos of something similar to what you're working on that I'm sure you could copy to make it look like the prototype. Some more of those letters. The X is getting done. You put in the comments. How about for the comments below? Everybody says chassis system is what CSX stands for. If that's true, put in the comments and see if that's true. So while I'm doing this, I grew up with Conrail, and then when CSX took over, pretty bummed about it. Never really liked CSX until I really moved to Nashville, and I'm still not the biggest CSX fan, but I really do miss the Y&2 schemes. And this is for all the new viewers or anybody who's new to model railroading or to trains. This is called a Y&2 paint scheme for CSX. Now they have a Y&3, which is really like a dark future blue and like a goldish yellow. So there's only two colors compared to the three colors here. And I believe there's a GP38 in still in Y&2 paint. I think that's the last one on their roster in that color that's still in active use. I remember seeing it in Gallatin, Tennessee about 6-7 months ago. And it's going around the system, and they're still using it. So here we're doing the same thing with the cab numbers on that side, just trying to copy basically really close to what the other side has in the prototype. And going back and cleaning out certain sections that are, that may not need all that faded. So now instead of looking faded, it looks like paint's just been chewed. It's been chipped away, and also the paint looks like the paint's like chipped away, as well as maybe some burning marks. And I remember I took a well, here, yeah, I get a I took a gray powder and went over the entire model, so I had a little more gray than just a pure white look to it. And each layer has been covered with some dull coat, so that way none of the other layers are erased or ruined. And here I'm actually using the rail brown, and they give it, in the nooks and crannies, represents a little bit of that rust that's in all the hinges of the doorways and all that stuff. And these are blue box models. They're not as detailed, or the parts are engraved within the model and the plastic, so they're not really stick out. Here's some powders, some rust powders we're using, and what I'm doing here is adding some rust onto the side here, and just like the prototype. And doing the same thing over here, getting rid of some of that, some of the white fading on the top and bottom. And also you can see the radiators have been painted with some black paint to make them look like they've really been used. And going back over with some more of that little rail brown. I really like that color, as you can tell, and some rust. And here I'm painting those radiators on the other side. So it's almost like a prime paint color, so you don't have to tape the whole locomotive or really tape the heck out of it if it's, unless you need to. But you could get away with stuff like that. So this whole section is getting some of that little rust and getting nuclear crevices here and the hinges of the locomotive shell. I mean, this engine is beat up, it really is. Now we're doing the rooftop. The rooftop gets its normal diluted black. Again, I couldn't really find a really good picture of the top, so I really kind of with my instinct, and that it's really filthy on the top. And I got rid of a lot of it, so that's why it doesn't look completely black. That wasn't the whole point. Was to the whole point was to get the radiators mostly black and have some soot on the sides of the radiators. So here I'm getting rid of some of that excess black paint. And instead, going back with some of that rail brown. So now it looks like there's some rust on top and all that too. Well, the radiators get on the side. Go more of some of that rust. And the wheels look pretty prototypical and look pretty close to the model itself. Use some different kind of, use some whites and some grays, as well as some of that rail brown and some black. And so yeah, looks like I'm trying. Then here, get a top of the rooftop. And really making those walkways filthy and rusty. So we're getting pretty close to what the engine is supposed to look like. And now I'm taking this yellow ochre color, and it's like a golden yellowish color, and that's just to take some of that really light yellow out and make it look duller. And actually looks like it's just old, looks like paint that's being chipped away as well. It gives us some texture. And I have the other SD40-2 that I'm working on, and that I actually covered all the yellow with that, except for the logos, because the logo looked very white. So if you don't have like an airbrush, or you don't know how to fade properly, or you're scared to fade, you can use that little bit of that yellow ochre, that dark watercolor. It's a watercolor, and you can cover the whole engine except for the parts that you don't want to cover. So now it looks like the parts that you didn't touch with that yellow ochre paint, they look like they're brighter, so it looks more faded on those little sections. So here we covering again the whole entire locomotive. What's cool about having a dummy unit, and really have to worry about the electrical conductivity of the wheels. I did clean the wheels anyways, but it's less of a risk, which is always great. I really enjoy this project. This project was a lot of fun, and I hope this video helped everybody to see there's a different process than doing all the different kinds of other techniques. And so this is the finished product here. Look how beautiful it looks. It's pretty close. I like it. Again, you guys can find me on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, obviously here on YouTube. And I really appreciate everybody coming out and watching these videos. And I would like to thank all my supporters and all my clients for trusting me with their service, with my services, and all the stuff that we do together. We share the hobby. I really appreciate it. And this is Joey from Touch of the Brush Model Weathering. You guys take care. Happy model railroading.